In a galaxy far beyond Earth, where alien civilizations ruled with unmatched power and advanced technology, there was a name that struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest warriors. This name belonged to the renowned alien duel master, Zorthar. Zorthar wasn't just any fighter, he was the undefeated champion of the intergalactic arena. His strength, speed, and combat skills were legendary, and no one, not even the most seasoned warriors from distant planets, had ever stood a chance against him. He was the embodiment of perfection. Zorthar had seen many challenges in his time, but none had ever come from a human. To him, humans were weak, primitive creatures, no match for a being like him. So, when a human swordsman named Ethan volunteered for a duel, Zorthar laughed. Human? Really? He could barely contain his amusement. But it wasn't just the fact that Ethan was human that made Zorthar scoff, it was the fact that Ethan was a swordsman. Zorthar had fought creatures wielding plasma swords, energy shields, and advanced weaponry. The idea of a human with nothing but a blade made him chuckle. Ethan stood before him, wearing simple armor and gripping his sword with both hands. He looked like an underdog, an insignificant figure compared to Zorthar's imposing, muscular frame and glowing, high-tech armor. The crowd, a mix of beings from different worlds, watched in silence, waiting to see what would unfold. With a smirk, Zorthar raised his hand, signaling the start of the duel. He moved with incredible speed, instantly closing the gap between them. His first strike was a devastating slash aimed straight at Ethan's head. The audience gasped, expecting the human to be sliced in half within seconds. But then, something strange happened. Ethan, in a smooth, almost fluid motion, sidestepped the blow. Zorthar's blade missed by mere inches. The alien fighter paused for a moment, his eyes narrowing. That was too close. Zorthar wasn't used to being outmaneuvered. Ethan didn't waste time. He lunged forward, his sword aiming for Zorthar's exposed side. The move was swift, clean, and precise. Zorthar blocked it with his own weapon, but the force of the strike sent a jolt through his body. The crowd murmured in surprise. Was this human actually a threat? Zorthar shook off the surprise and began to fight back with even more intensity. His strikes were fast and brutal, each one designed to overwhelm his opponent. But Ethan's movements were graceful, like a dance, dodging and weaving with precision. He wasn't just relying on strength, he was using his mind, his instincts. Zorthar's strikes became more and more erratic, while Ethan's remained calm and deliberate. Each time Zorthar thought he had the upper hand, Ethan would surprise him again with a quick counter. The alien fighter's confidence began to crack. Zorthar had fought countless opponents, but none had ever made him feel like this off balance, uncertain, and increasingly frustrated. He had underestimated the human swordsman. This wasn't just about strength. Ethan was using strategy, something Zorthar didn't expect from someone so simple. As the battle raged on, Zorthar's frustration grew. His advanced alien technology, his superior strength, and his centuries of experience weren't enough to defeat Ethan. The crowd began to cheer, sensing that the underdog might actually have a chance. Zorthar was no longer laughing. His movements became desperate, his attacks more wild and reckless. Ethan, on the other hand, remained calm, almost as if he had been expecting this moment all along. Then, in a final moment of brilliance, Ethan saw an opening. Zorthar swung his blade with all his might, aiming for Ethan's torso. It was the perfect strike a blow that could finish the duel once and for all. But Ethan, with unmatched timing and precision, ducked low and spun around, bringing his sword up in a clean arc. His blade struck Zorthar's weapon, causing it to fly from his hands. The alien duel master was now defenseless. For a moment, everything was silent. Zorthar stood there, weaponless, his chest heaving with exhaustion and disbelief. He looked down at Ethan, who stood tall and unwavering, his sword raised high in victory. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Zorthar couldn't hear them. He was lost in his own thoughts, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. How had this human, with nothing but a simple sword and sheer willpower, managed to defeat him? Zorthar had underestimated the human spirit, the power of determination, strategy, and mental strength. In his arrogance, he had believed that nothing could challenge him. But Ethan had proved him wrong. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't need to. His victory was his statement. The alien duel master, for the first time in his life, felt what it was like to be truly outclassed. As Zorthar knelt in defeat, Ethan walked away, his head held high. The alien master had learned a valuable lesson that day. Sometimes the greatest strength doesn't come from technology or raw power. It comes from the heart, the mind, and the will to never give up. Ethan had the last laugh, and it was a laugh that Zorthar would never forget. The crowd was restless. They gathered in the vast arena, filling the stands with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. On one side, towering above all, stood Alien Duel Master. A warrior like no other, he was known throughout the galaxy for his raw power, incredible speed, and unyielding confidence. His armor, shining with otherworldly technology, radiated with an aura of superiority. Zarnok had never lost a battle, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind that today would be no different. Facing him was a human swordsman named Leo. He appeared small in comparison, with no special armor or advanced weaponry. His simple sword, made of ordinary steel, looked almost laughable next to Zarnok's high-tech weaponry. The crowd murmured, wondering if this human even stood a chance. But Leo was unfazed. His expression was calm, his eyes sharp. He was an underdog, but he was prepared. Asa the duel began. The sound of the bell echoed across the arena, signaling the start of the fight. Zarnok moved first. With blinding speed, he rushed toward Leo, his weapon glowing with deadly energy. Leo barely had time to react, but in a swift motion, he raised his sword to block the attack. The force of Zarnok's strike pushed him back, but he didn't falter. He planted his feet and held his ground. Zarnok laughed, sensing his victory. "Is that all you have, human?" he taunted, stepping back for another blow. He attacked again, this time faster and more powerfully. Leo's sword clashed with Zarnok's, but this time, Leo didn't just block the attack, he deflected it. His movements were quick and precise, something that the alien didn't expect from a mere human. Zarnok's eyes narrowed in surprise. For a moment, Leo felt something stir within him. It wasn't strength, it wasn't speed, it was something deeper. A power he had hidden for years. He had trained his whole life, not just in sword fighting, but in patience, focus, and resilience. He had learned to listen to his body and trust his instincts. But this fight, this moment, required something more. Leo's mind cleared, and he embraced the power that he had never fully tapped into before. Zarnok attacked again, his weapon striking down in a series of rapid blows. Each one came with such force that the ground shook beneath them. Leo dodged and blocked, but something in his movements had changed. He was no longer just reacting. He was anticipating. With every strike from Zarnok, Leo felt his mind sharpen, his body moving with perfect synchronization. The crowd was silent, watching in awe. Leo's movements were almost fluid, as if he were one with the sword, one with the very air around him. Zarnok, who had once been unstoppable, now found himself struggling to keep up. The human swordsman was no longer just a man with a sword. He was something more. He was an enigma that Zarnok couldn't understand. Zarnok swung his weapon with all his might, aiming for Leo's head. But Leo was faster. He ducked just in time, his sword darting forward in a quick thrust. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it was precise, aimed directly at Zarnok's vulnerable side. Zarnok barely managed to step back, but the strike grazed his armor. It wasn't enough to cause serious damage, but the fact that Leo had landed even the smallest hit made Zarnok pause. Something was wrong. Zarnok had never been hit like this before. He had faced countless warriors, each stronger than the last, but none had ever come so close to defeating him. He gritted his teeth, frustration building within him. This human, with his simple sword and primitive techniques, was getting in the way of his perfect record. The more he tried to overpower Leo, the more Leo adapted, countering with every move. It was like he was reading Zarnok's mind. the alien's strikes became more desperate. He started using his advanced technology to enhance his blows, hoping that sheer force would break through Leo's defense. But Leo's movements were too fluid, too precise. It was as if he had become one with the battlefield, flowing like water and dodging every attack with ease. Zarnok was no longer just fighting a man. He was fighting against something he couldn't comprehend. With a sudden, unexpected shift, Leo found an opening. Zarnok, exhausted from his relentless attacks, had left his side unprotected. In that split second, Leo lunged forward. His sword found its mark, not with brute force, but with a deadly accuracy. The blade sank deep into the alien's armor, causing a burst of sparks. Zarnok staggered back, stunned. For the first time, the mighty duel master had been struck down. The crowd erupted in shock, their cheers echoing across the arena. Zarnok looked at Leo, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had underestimated the human. He had thought that power alone was the key to victory, but he had been wrong. Leo hadn't relied on strength or speed alone. He had drawn upon something far greater, a hidden strength that had come from within. Leo stood tall, his sword held firmly in his hand. He hadn't needed advanced technology or overwhelming force. He had used his training, his mind, and his will. He had found the strength within himself that Zarnok had never even considered. And in doing so, he had proven that sometimes the greatest power doesn't come from technology or muscle. It comes from the heart. Zarnok knelt in defeat, his confidence shattered. For the first time, he realized that there was more to strength than he had ever imagined. The human had shown him that. As Leo walked away, the arena filled with applause. His victory was a reminder that true strength comes from within, and no amount of technology or power could ever take that away. In the vast and deadly arena, where warriors from all corners of the galaxy fought for fame and glory, there was a name that struck fear into the hearts of all who heard it. Zorak, the alien duel master, had never known defeat. His alien physiology, enhanced by advanced technology, made him an unstoppable force. With his sleek, glowing armor and energy sword, he was a living legend. His victories were countless, and his name was known across the stars as the ultimate warrior. Yet today, there was a challenge. A human swordsman, Alex, had dared to step into the arena. The crowd watched in stunned silence, unsure if this was a joke. What could a human, armed with only a simple sword, possibly do against Zorak's unmatched power? The contrast between the two could not have been more apparent. Zorak was massive, towering over Alex, his muscles rippling beneath the high-tech armor. Alex, on the other hand, was ordinary. No advanced weapons, no superhuman abilities, just a simple sword, passed down through generations. Zorak stood confidently, his eyes fixed on the human. "This is no place for someone like you," he sneered, his voice booming across the arena. "You will be crushed in seconds." Alex didn't respond. His face remained calm, almost unreadable. He gripped his sword tightly, his eyes focusing on the duel master before him. He knew he was the underdog. He knew that the odds were against him. But he also knew something that no one else did. He had a secret. A secret he had kept hidden for years, buried deep within him. The duel began with the sound of the bell. Zorak wasted no time. He charged forward, his weapon crackling with energy, moving with speed that was almost impossible to follow. Alex barely had time to react. Zorak's blade came crashing down with incredible force. The crowd gasped, certain that the human would be struck down immediately. But in a swift, almost unnatural movement, Alex parried the blow. He wasn't just defending, he was in control. The crowd watched, stunned. Had they seen that correctly? A human had blocked Zorak's strike? Zorak growled in frustration. He wasn't used to this. Most opponents couldn't even touch him. They were no match for his superior strength, technology, and combat training. But this human, with nothing but a simple sword, was different. Alex's movements were fluid, fast, and precise. Every strike from Zorak was met with perfect defense, every swing blocked with ease. Zorak was no longer sure of himself. He was beginning to feel something he had never felt before, uncertainty. As the fight continued, something unexpected happened. Zorak began to push harder, trying to overwhelm Alex with a series of rapid, brutal attacks. But Alex didn't tire. He didn't hesitate. His sword seemed to move of its own accord, flowing in ways that shouldn't have been possible for a human. Zorak couldn't keep up. His attacks began to falter, growing more erratic as he tried to land a decisive blow. Alex knew something that Zorak didn't. Over the years, he had honed his skills, not just in sword fighting, but in understanding the rhythm of battle. He knew how to read his opponent, how to predict their moves. But there was more to it than that. The true secret of his skill lay in the ancient techniques passed down by his ancestors, techniques that Zorak had never encountered before. These techniques weren't just about speed or strength, they were about balance, timing, and control. And they were ancient, long-forgotten methods that Alex had spent years perfecting. At the peak of the battle, Zorak swung his energy sword with all his might, aiming directly at Alex's heart. It was the final blow, the one that would end the fight. The crowd held its breath. But at the last moment, Alex sidestepped with almost unnatural grace. He wasn't fast, he was precise. In one swift motion, he thrust his sword forward, aiming not at Zorak's body, but at the weak point in his armor, a spot that only someone who knew the ancient techniques would recognize. Zorak's eyes widened as Alex's sword pierced through the armor, grazing his side. The alien stumbled back, stunned. For the first time, he felt pain. The crowd erupted in shock. Could this really be happening? Had a human with nothing but a simple sword actually wounded the mighty Zorak? Zorak growled, his anger rising. He charged again, determined to finish the fight. But this time, Alex was ready. He anticipated every move Zorak made. With every strike, Alex blocked and countered, always one step ahead. Zorak's movements became more desperate. He was no longer fighting with confidence. He was fighting with fear. He had underestimated his opponent, and now it was too late. Finally, in one last calculated move, Alex disarmed Zorak, knocking his energy sword to the ground. The alien stood there, defenseless, his breath heavy. The crowd was silent. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The mighty Zorak, brought to his knees by a human with nothing but a sword. Alex stood tall, his sword pointed at Zorak's chest. He didn't speak. There was no need. His victory was clear. Zorak, the alien who had once been unbeatable, had been defeated by a human. And what made it even more incredible was that it hadn't been strength, technology, or sheer force that won the battle. It was the secret techniques of an ancient warrior, passed down through generations, and a mind that had mastered the art of combat in a way Zorak could never understand. Zorak, now humbled and defeated, looked up at Alex. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep sense of respect. Alex had proven that true strength didn't always come from what could be seen. It came from the knowledge, the discipline, and the secrets hidden within. As Alex walked away from the arena, the crowd cheered. His victory was more than just a win in a duel. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't power or technology, it's the secrets we hold within ourselves. The arena was filled with the loud cheers and excitement of spectators from across the galaxy. Today's match was unlike any other. On one side stood Threxer, a monstrous alien warrior known for his incredible strength and terrifying speed. His body was a wall of muscle, covered in dark metallic armor that pulsed with energy. Threxer's reputation as the fastest and most dangerous fighter in the galaxy was unmatched. No one had ever dared challenge him, and for good reason, no one could keep up with his speed. But today, things were different. On the opposite side stood a human swordsman named Lucas. He was small and appeared unremarkable, with nothing more than a simple blade in his hand. His armor was light and simple, meant for mobility, not protection. The crowd murmured in disbelief. How could this human, armed with only a basic sword, even dream of standing up to Threxer's power? They couldn't have been more wrong. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the fight, Threxer wasted no time. With a roar, he dashed forward with lightning speed, his massive form moving faster than anyone had anticipated. His energy blade surged with light, and it seemed like he would crush Lucas with a single strike. The crowd gasped, certain that it would all be over in seconds. But Lucas was already in motion, his feet shifting with precision, his sword raised and ready. In an almost unreal twist, Lucas sidestepped Threxer's first strike. Threxer's blade cut through the air, missing by inches. It wasn't just a lucky dodge, it was deliberate. Lucas moved as if he had anticipated Threxer's every step. The alien fighter blinked in surprise, his confidence starting to waver for the first time. He had never met anyone who could match his speed. This human was different. The fight continued, and Threxer attacked with everything he had. Each of his strikes was faster than the last, and the ground shook beneath the weight of his attacks. But Lucas, calm and focused, was always one step ahead. He dodged and parried with astonishing agility. His movements were fluid and graceful, as if he had become one with the wind itself. His sword never missed a beat, deflecting Threxer's brutal strikes with ease. The crowd watched in stunned silence. How was this possible? Threxer, the fastest warrior in the galaxy, was being outmaneuvered by a human with nothing but a basic sword. It was as though Lucas had found a way to read his opponent's movements before they even happened. But that wasn't the case. Lucas was not relying on any extraordinary powers. What he had was something far more valuable: his training. Years of preparation had sharpened his reflexes, and he had mastered the art of predicting an enemy's movements. This wasn't just about strength or speed, it was about control, timing, and precision. Threxer, growing frustrated, increased his pace. His attacks became more intense, more wild, but the more he attacked, the more he exposed himself. Each time he tried to strike, Lucas was there to meet him, either blocking or slipping out of reach. It was as if Lucas knew the fight before it even began. Then, in a split second, Lucas saw it. A small opening. Threxer had overextended, and his back was momentarily exposed. With a lightning-fast move, Lucas shifted his weight and lunged forward, his blade slicing through the air with pinpoint accuracy. Threxer barely had time to react. The sword grazed his armor, leaving a small but deep scratch along his side. The crowd gasped. Threxer had been hit. A human had actually wounded him. Threxer stepped back, his breath heavy, his mind racing. He couldn't understand it. His body was stronger, faster, superior in every way. Yet, this human had done the impossible. Threxer had never been hit before. Not like this. His mind began to cloud with frustration, his strikes becoming even more erratic and desperate. The more he fought, the more exhausted he became. Lucas, however, remained calm, his movements smooth and controlled. He was in perfect harmony with the fight, moving with the flow of the battle, using Threxer's speed and aggression against him. The alien's face twisted in anger, his speed increasing once again. His attacks came like a storm, faster than before, harder than before. The arena was filled with the sound of their blades clashing, the air buzzing with energy. But Lucas was still there, moving faster than the eye could follow, his blade dancing through the air, deflecting Threxer's every attack. Then, in a moment of pure brilliance, Lucas saw his chance. Threxer's momentum carried him too far forward, and for the briefest of moments, he was vulnerable. Lucas, without hesitation, moved in. He struck with incredible speed, his blade aimed not at Threxer's armor, but at the alien's exposed joint, the one place his armor couldn't protect. The sword struck true, sliding through the gap in the alien's defense. Threxer staggered backward, a cry of pain escaping his lips. He had been defeated. The crowd was in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what they had just seen. Threxer, the fastest, most powerful warrior in the galaxy, had been outmaneuvered and defeated by a human. And it wasn't through strength, or brute force, or technology. It was through speed, precise, calculated, and perfect speed. Lucas had simply moved faster, outthinking and outplaying his opponent at every turn. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the duel, Lucas stood tall, his sword lowered in victory. Threxer, wounded and exhausted, knelt in defeat. The alien warrior, who had once been untouchable, now understood the truth. Speed was not just about raw force. It was about control, timing, and the ability to outsmart your opponent. Lucas's victory was a testament to the power of precision and the art of battle. The crowd erupted into applause, not just because of the shocking outcome, but because they had witnessed something truly extraordinary. The human swordsman had defeated the greatest warrior in the galaxy, not with power or technology, but with pure speed. The arena was silent, and for a moment, it seemed as though time had stopped. The crowd, who had gathered from all parts of the galaxy, waited with bated breath. On one side stood Kyle, the human challenger, dressed in a simple tunic and carrying only a basic sword. He was a young man, slim, with short brown hair and eyes that seemed to carry a quiet determination. His presence wasn't imposing, and his weapon looked like it belonged in the hands of an amateur. No one believed that he could stand a chance against his opponent, the legendary alien warrior, Uraz, who was known for his incredible strength, agility, and cunning. Uraz stood on the opposite side, an imposing figure draped in thick, shining armor, his eyes glowing with the power of advanced alien technology. His reputation was unmatched, and he had defeated every opponent that dared challenge him. The crowd knew what was about to happen. They knew that this fight, like so many before it, would end in Uraz's victory. No one could stand against the might of Uraz. "Your courage is admirable, human," Uraz called out, his voice booming and deep. "But it will not be enough." Kyle didn't reply. His eyes never wavered, and his posture was calm. He didn't speak of his plans, and he didn't boast of his abilities. He only waited, watching Uraz carefully, studying his every move. As the bell rang to signal the start of the duel, the atmosphere seemed to charge with tension. Uraz was the first to move. With a roar, he charged toward Kale, his massive sword raised high. The ground trembled beneath his feet as he approached, and the air seemed to crackle with energy. Kale didn't move at first, his focus locked entirely on Uraz's movements. The alien warrior was fast, far faster than Kyle had expected, but Kyle was ready. With a quick sidestep, he narrowly avoided Uraz's downward strike. The crowd gasped, and for a brief moment, Uraz faltered. "You are quick, human," Uraz sneered, circling Kale. "But speed alone will not save you." Kale didn't respond. Instead, he held his ground, waiting for Uraz to make another move. Uraz launched another series of strikes, each one faster and more powerful than the last. Kyle blocked and dodged, but the force behind Uraz's blows was like nothing he had faced before. The arena vibrated with every strike, and Kale could feel the ground beneath his feet shift with the force of Uraz's strength. But Kyle wasn't focused on the power behind Uraz's attacks. He was focused on something else, something deeper. It wasn't just about avoiding the blows or fighting back. Kale had been through worse, much worse. His mind was sharp, and his heart was steadfast. He knew that Uraz could break his body, but there was one thing that Uraz could never break: the will of a human who refused to give you P.A.S. The battle continued. Kale began to move with a quiet precision. Every time Uraz attacked, Kyle would find an opening, however small, and he would exploit it. His movements were becoming more fluid, more confident. His sword wasn't as fast as Uraz's weapon, but it didn't need to be. Kale's strength lay not in the size of his blade, but in his determination to stand firm no matter what. Uraz's strikes became more desperate. The alien had never fought anyone like this before. Most of his previous opponents had fallen within minutes, but Kale was different. He was not the strongest, nor the fastest, but he had something that Uraz had never encountered: an unyielding will to win. Kale's resolve didn't waver, no matter how hard Uraz attacked. He was pushing back against the overwhelming odds, refusing to give in to fear or pain. In a flash, Uraz swung his sword, aiming for Kale's head. Kale saw it coming, but he didn't back away. With a swift movement, Kyle ducked under Uraz's massive blade, his sword flashing as he delivered a quick, precise strike to Uraz's side. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it was enough to make Uraz pause. The alien grunted in frustration, stumbling back. He couldn't believe it. This human had actually managed to land a hit. His armor was intact, but the strike had left a mark that Uraz had never allowed to happen before. He had underestimated Kale, and now he was feeling the consequences. Uraz's breathing grew heavier, his attack slower as the exhaustion began to set in. Kyle, on the other hand, showed no sign of slowing down. He wasn't physically stronger than Uraz, but his will to keep going was unshakable. Every time Uraz's blade came close, Kale found a way to avoid it, his movements steady and calculated. His mind remained sharp, his focus unwavering. This wasn't a fight of strength. It was a battle of endurance, of spirit. The alien warrior's frustration grew as the fight dragged on. His attacks became more reckless, his rage clouding his judgment. He swung wildly, hoping to end the battle in one decisive blow. But Kyle, with a perfect understanding of timing, dodged once more, and in that moment of vulnerability, he struck again. This time, his sword found its mark. It wasn't a deep wound, but it was enough to make Uraz falter. The alien staggered, his strength faltering. The crowd, who had been expecting an easy victory for Uraz, now watched in stunned silence. The alien, once thought unbeatable, was beginning to lose control. Kyle had proven something that no one thought was possible. The fight wasn't about power, it was about will. With one final strike, Kyle disarmed Uraz, sending his sword flying from his grasp. The alien warrior fell to his knees, his breath heavy and ragged. Kyle stood over him, sword raised, but he didn't strike. He didn't need to. The message had already been sent. Uraz, the mighty warrior, had been defeated, not by force, but by the human spirit. The arena erupted in applause as Kyle walked away, his heart beating strong. He had proven that no matter how powerful an enemy might seem, nothing could defeat a human with an unbeatable will.